exhaust gas recycling unit on a 2007 Jaguar X-Type 2 litre diesel. When I got into the car the other day and went to start it, it wouldn't start. As you can see, it turns over okay, but it just won't actually fire up. So I measured the voltage on the battery, which was 12.3, so I put it on charge for a little bit. Now it reads 12.79, that's a lot better. And when I went to start it, it did start, but the initial voltage dropped to 8.9 volts and went on to sound a bit rough and was idling a little erratic. So as this car's done over 100,000 miles, it's likely to be clogged up with carbon all inside the EGR and the intake manifold. So I'm going to take all that off and clean it all out. I'm not saying this will fix the issue, but I now know I need a new battery at least. My thinking could be the EGR valve is stuck in the open position. Hence cleaning the EGR could fix that issue. I'll do that first, then I'll look at the crankshaft position sensor and the camshaft position sensor. Could possibly be one of those, but that'll be another video. Anyway, EGR first. I'm taking the negative earth lead off just in case. Now you need to take the airbox out to make some more room to get at the intake manifold. An EGR assembly here. You need to take off this air inlet hose and the MAF sensor, and the airbox itself is held on by two rubber spigots at the bottom, which I'll just pull up. Take off the mass airflow sensor on the top of the intake, just depress the little plastic lug and pull it off. Now you want to use some pipe wrenches and depress the clip, pull that back. And then pull the pipe off. You have to take these two intake pipes off at the front, which are quite stiff. You can prise them off with a screwdriver, but they're not easy to get back on. So I recommend opening the airbox up, and then you can get your hand in, which makes it much easier. Lift the lid up and then take the vacuum hose off. Just up here underneath, just prise that off with a screwdriver. It's just a rubber pipe. Take the air cleaner out, put it somewhere safe. With the airbox open, you can put your hand in and you can push your finger up against a rubber lug that's moulded into the top of the intake pipes at the front, just here. You want to lift these up and then prise them off. I'm using quite a heavy gauge flat bladed screwdriver for this. Once the top recessed lug is clear, then you just need to push the pipes off towards the front as much as you can. Ease the top rubbers off on both sides before taking hold of the airbox and pulling it off the spigots at the bottom, which fit into these two rubber grommet holders on the metal plate here. Put the airbox to one side. There's a few things to take off to get at the intake manifold, such as this metal plate held in place with three 10mm bolts. Some of these cables are attached, so we need to release those. Most are held in with Christmas tree lugs that just need prising out, and if you're careful you won't need to replace those. Take this one out on the right. Take the plate off. Get this cable off. Whoops, that's breaking up. Oh dear, I've broken that one a little bit. Take this cream clip off, that just pulls up. And there's another cable to release here. That's come off nicely. Now then, what else is to be removed? You've got to take off the clip on the camshaft position sensor, just here. This isn't that easy to get off. There's a little nodule on the bottom of the clip. You've got to push it up and that will release the clip. And you can pull it forward. Failing that, you can just unbolt the whole sensor. Pull off the little rubber vacuum pipe that's attached to the EGR diaphragm housing. And the electrical connector. Depress the plastic at the side and it'll slide off. Take off the two 10mm nuts on the exhaust gas transfer pipe to the EGR, being careful not to drop them. The one at the back here is a little bit tricky, but I managed to do it with a short 10mm ring spanner. Waggle that loose, and then use the 7mm socket to loosen the band clip and detach the rubber intercooler pipe that's attached to the bottom of the EGR valve. I found it easier to use a little swivel knuckle here. Once it's loose, then you just push down on the pipe to detach it. And I found a large screwdriver helped it to move to one side. Then you need to loosen the two 8mm bolts attached to the inlet manifold flange. You don't have to take these bolts out, they're designed just to sit in place. I've just taken it out just to show you how they assemble. The bolt won't actually pull out of the little collet and rubber bush. Quite a nifty little design. Once you've loosened the bolts, you should be able to waggle free the EGR valve. This one's got quite a bit of carbon build-up. I'm not sure when it was cleaned out last. The car's done just over 100,000 miles. Here's the plastic intake manifold with all the bolts that you have to take out. It's a relatively easy job, this. And as the gaskets are silicone on these, I'm thinking that I might reuse them depending on the condition. You should really renew them anyway, as standard practice. Loosen all the bolts off. Taking the last bolt out, it all comes loose. If it's still stuck on there, just give it a waggle and it should break free. Don't try and prise it off as it's only plastic. And then it's just a question of teasing it between the cables to get it out. Again, there's quite a significant amount of carbon build-up, so I'll have to clean all that up. And you can see the silicone gasket seals as well, which should be okay with a bit of a clean. If we take a look at the valve ports on the cylinder head, We can see they're quite caked up with carbon as well. And I will clean the surface of these off, but you have to be mindful of dropping any debris onto the back of the valve seats or into the cylinders here, as some of the valves will be open. You could clean out the individual valve ports with the valves closed, but as these ports are quite long and I can't actually see the back of the valves very easily, I don't think I'll be flushing these out in a hurry. Right, now for my clean-up operation. What I tend to use is carb cleaner and Mr. Muscle oven cleaner. I think I'll just take all these seals off. Starting with the EGR valve, you want to make sure you get the plunger working. It should be nice and free when you've finished. You should be able to push it open and it'll spring shut. So you should use a brush on the delicate parts and some sort of bluntish tool on the thicker parts. I'm using a blunt screwdriver here to scrape away the really thick stuff. And then spray copious amounts of oven cleaner, which you might have to do a few times. You want to be cleaning everything as much as you can. And it'll probably take you quite a while, which is kind of a euphemism for a very long time. You might have to have a break or two, or in my case a brew or two. But eventually you'll get it looking like this. Whoops-a-daisy, I mean like this. Nice and clean. Lovely job. That's not looking too bad. Still one or two little bits of carbon, but not overall, it's pretty good. But I can't say that for the bowl. Yeah. Clean up the ports on the cylinder head and be mindful of not dropping any debris into the back of the valve seats or the cylinders, as some of the ports will be open. And as I said earlier, the ports on these models on the head is quite deep, so you can't actually see the back of the valve seats. You could thoroughly clean the ports out if you made sure the valve seats were closed by turning the engine over on each cylinder. But I'll probably use a camera to do that. Then remove every trace of carbon, flushing the whole thing out and then sucking or blowing it out with a compressor until it's completely clear. But as the ports are so long, I'm not going to do that on this engine. If it becomes a problem in the future, then I'll just take the head off. Then you can take the valves out to do a proper job. Anyway, I'm happy with what I've done here. That looks alright for me. The machine surface is fine for the gaskets to go back on, so I'll just put the intake manifold back on now. Refit the cleaned up seals. So I don't think the seals are too bad. I'm going to give it a go and reuse them. I'll just nip them up a little bit tighter probably. And as I said, it would actually be best to renew them. Right, we've got the intake manifold to put on and we've got the EGR valve to put on. So you can put it back in reverse order, but I think what I'm going to do, because I've got this exhaust pipe to put on as well, and the intercooler pipe. So as there's plenty of room, I think I'm going to put the EGR valve on the intercooler pipe first, because I can just bend it in place in the exhaust port with everything out of the way. Right, so I'm going to push the EGR valve down onto the intake pipe. That's gone on. Yeah, that's better. Now I can put the intake manifold on. Just jiggle it in place. and the EGR valve sits nicely there, ready to bolt up. Just put the bolts in loosely. That settles nicely, so I'll just put the intake manifold bolts in loosely now. I'm sure there's a sequence to do in these, and I'm not sure what it is, so I'm going to just do it from the centre outwards, I think. The main thing is to draw it up to the cylinder head evenly, and to the correct torque, of course. I'll leave the torque settings in the description. Now I'll just hand tighten the EGR valve onto the flange. I'll just put the two 10mm nuts carefully back on the threaded spigots to the exhaust transfer pipe. Right, that's all the nuts and bolts on. Oh, and there's the intercooler pipe to tighten home, which I did with a flexible knuckle joint. So it's just a question of torquing everything up now. And I'll start with the inlet manifold. Now tighten the flange bolts on the intake manifold to the EGR at the top. And finally the transfer pipe. Put the electrical connection back on the EGR, that just slots on and clicks into place. And don't forget to put the vacuum pipe on, otherwise it won't work, as this enables the diaphragm to move the valve on the EGR. Cam centre connection back on, that clicks into place again. It'll only go on one way. And then there's this cable that just needs pushing back into the little hole up here. And this cream coloured plug, just push that back on. It's a relatively easy job to put the airbox mounting bracket back on with three 10mm bolts. Tighten those up. And refit this cable with the little Christmas tree lugs. Just push it into place nice and firmly. Refitting the airbox, you need to be mindful of the two spigots on the bottom that fit into the bracket and the rubber bushes on the top. Put your hand inside the box and refit the two air pipes at the front by lifting up the little lug. Once those are on, it's just a question of fitting it onto the spigots and the rubber bushes. It's quite a firm, secure fit. Refit the air filter. Attach the intake pipe and put the top of the box on, securing it with all the screws. Re-establish the intake pipe bracket and the airflow sensor clicking into place. And don't forget to put the vacuum pipe back on the airbox lid like I did. I should have put it on when I was attaching it to the intake pipe. And you're just about done. All you need to do is reattach the negative earth lead on the battery and put the top cover on. Oh, you want to take the little rubber, take the cap off and the rubber spout filler thing and refit that into the cover before you put it back on the top. Slotting in the dipstick holder first. And all we've got to do now is refit the oil filler cap before my gloves fall to pieces. And of course test the car to see if it's made an improvement or not. I'm hoping it does. Hope this helped you out, guys. Please like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.